Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Business of Fun podcast. It's me, Dave Wakeman, your host, and my guest today from True Tickets is Matt Zarracina, also fellow Spurs fan. So, fellow Spurs fans always get a fair chance to promote their products or talk about what they're working on here. Before we talk about Matt and what Matt and I talked about, let me remind you to sign up for the newsletter, talkingtickets.substack.com. It's Talking Tickets is the weekly newsletter, 5 sections. It's about 10 minutes worth of material, some of my best thinking. It's how I work out my ideas, how I analyze, observe, make notes, share things from around the world to help you sell more tickets. Talkingtickets.substack.com. You can also visit my website. It's davewakeman.com. There is a blog, there is a calendar, there is a store, there's all kinds of stuff. And I will be announcing some dates when I will be in your city. But I'm going to be, it looks like probably in New York. Well, I'll definitely be in New York, London, and potentially Sydney coming up in the next couple weeks. So pay attention to the website and the newsletter or the podcast stream, and I will let you know what I'm up to. Matt Zarracina, besides being a big Spurs fan, is the CEO of True Tickets. Today, as I am dropping this podcast, they are announcing a rules-based ticket idea that will power True Tickets. So we talk about what rules-based ticketing means. We talked about some of the ideas around NFTs and blockchain in tickets. Matt, I think, has maybe a slightly different take on things than a lot of other people do. We talk about how the venues that they partner with set rules, some of the rules that True Tickets has found to work best. We talk about challenges in the ticket system. We talk about the volume of tickets that have gone through here so that we can move past the point where this is untested technology. Matt shows that they've done millions and millions of dollars worth of transactions. So that's, interesting to see, because I think scale is a question that a lot of people have. We talk about fraud. We talk about the customer. We talk about market research. We talk about efficiencies and developing relationships. We talk about how to delight and excite, the laws of the sale. We talk about malicious secondary market activity, brokers, creating value in the ecosystem, all kinds of good stuff. So this is my conversation with fellow Spurs fan Matt Zarracina on the Business of Fun podcast. All right, so I want to welcome Matt from True Tickets to the Business of Fun podcast. Matt, what's happening?
Not much, Dave. How you doing?
Listen, I'm great. I am back to normal. I am like 100% me. And when you said there's nothing, listen, don't lie to me, because we're as we get ready to, as we're recording this, the Spurs are getting ready to play. So there's a lot going on.
Southampton, right on the 6th.
So there's a lot going. Yeah, exactly.
Season kicks off.
This won't come out till afterwards, until the next week. But I'm certain we're going to get a 3-0 win out of this one. So we'll just pretend that happened.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is you got some exciting stuff to share with us. There is some interesting angles that we can take here today. But I want to start out because you're making an announcement about rules-based tickets. And you said that that's like an inflection point for the business. It's a chance for the business to push forward and have a big leap forward. Explain to us, talk to me like I'm a knucklehead, which I am, about what rules-based tickets is and what it means for the growth of the business.
Yeah, and I think it helps to start with the why, right? So when we think about the problems in ticketing at the highest level, most of the problems in ticketing revolve around issues of trust. And I'd actually say more of a lack of trust, right? So when you think about ticketing, trust is really defined as 2 parts to it. There's identity, in that who is in the possession of this ticket, and accountability. Have any of the rules or terms and conditions or terms of use associated with that ticket, have they been followed or adhered to? And without identity and accountability in ticketing, you lose trust, and with it, you gain it. And what makes us different is that why. Our focus is on providing identity and accountability to our clients and more broadly to the industry. And whether that be, let's say, for rules-based ticket sharing that we're talking about today, which I think is going to be an incredibly a powerful feature, impactful feature for our clients, incredibly well received by the industry. But what that also portends for the future, right, is this idea of a rules-based marketplace. If I can put rules around and enforce the rules around sharing of a ticket, then I can do the same thing in a marketplace concept, right? So, what channels is this ticket distributed through? How much is it resold for? What's the revenue split? And you can automate all of that. So that's really the foundation of our product. And to start, we are essentially live with it now with all our 9 clients, and the 3 rules they get to start with are: one is, can a ticket be shared? Right. So, if I have 2 tickets, can I send one to Dave? The second one is, can a ticket be reshared? Right. So Dave receives this ticket. If it can be reshared, he can send it to someone else. If he can't, he can only give it back to me. And the third is, does the original ticket buyer, the ticket purchaser, have to maintain a live ticket in their wallet? So let's say I have 4 tickets. If that rule is in place, I can only share 3 of the 4 if those tickets are shareable. And what's great about this is these are really just business rules that our clients can implement. And several of our clients have implemented different machinations of those rule sets. And as we grow, we intend to broaden those rule sets as well as make them a bit more granular. But we're really excited to see what this means for our clients in the marketplace.
So why did you settle on only is the 3 questions that people start with? Is that simply to help them get like a sort of like a quick start, or is it sort of to help them limit the options so that they don't get overwhelmed? Because I know, and maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, you tell me, but anytime you're trying to get people to adapt a new technology or a new idea, you have to break the old habits, right? And we've all gone through this period over the last 2.5 years where we've had severe pattern interruptions. And so in some ways, some of the ideas and some of the patterns have been more firmly entrenched, and in some ways, entirely new patterns have come up. And so when you're trying to get people to use this new technology, back to you, it's giving people just these 3 options. Is that a way to help them make the technology accessible at the start? Or is it just because these are the 3 most common challenges people are dealing with? Or, why has that decision been made?
That decision has actually been made in collaboration with our clients. What's interesting about this feature is it's actually been under work and in development for years. And one of the things that we've explored in depth with our clients is what's the right balance between rules and number of rules. And this is one of those situations where Coco Chanel's quote of less is more, I think, is applicable, right? When I explain to you those 3 rules, that covers a vast majority of the use cases you would say where you'd want to share a ticket, or if you're a business where you'd want to limit the sharing of a ticket. There's really no need to go into anything that's kind of above and beyond that, at least to start. And so we worked with our clients to try to understand how can we cover the maximum amount of use cases with the minimum amount of constraints, such that it is adopted, right? And it is not, it isn't overwhelming. And we think we found a very good balance. And what's interesting is we've actually been live for about a week. None of our clients have actually announced this product, but what we've seen is over 1,000 tickets have been shared amongst a handful of clients the product has been out with. There's been about 500 shares. And so we're seeing just organic adoption, right? And that's what's so incredibly validating about what we built, is that our clients have done no communications, no marketing, no education, yet you're seeing over 1,000 tickets be shared. 1,000 tickets we shared, I think 500 shares. So we're seeing on average about 2 tickets per share. And what I think that is indicative of is we are essentially helping our clients meet an unmet expectation. Patrons, fans are expecting this kind of capability. They're used to this kind of capability. And what's nice about it too is, unlike maybe some of the other options out there, we're doing real-time data right back. They're getting full transparency into it. When Dave accepts a ticket, that's going back into our client's ticketing CRM, right? So True Tickets isn't handling that. They don't have to query us. They don't have to log into a portal. We've worked it to where they're seeing that real-time in their ticketing system database.
Let me ask you about this real-time data idea too, because you say you highlight that as like one of the big key attributes of what you're offering people. How does this real-time data work for you and your clients? Because one thing that I'm always concerned about is that people are overwhelmed with data and they don't have any sort of framework for using the data. this real-time data stream that you're providing, is it something that has like real, like clear constraints, like the three questions that you have allowed people access to, or is it something like where people are more likely to, be overwhelmed with more data?
So I would say in our industry, most of our clients are underwhelmed with data, right? When you talk to most teams, venues, organizations, they know what, 20, 30, 40% of the patrons attending their experiences. Compare that with, if you think more broadly about the attention economy, compare that with Netflix or Amazon or Facebook or Google, right? They know what 90, 95, 99% of the people interacting with, consuming the services they provide. And in this instance, I would say our industry is underwhelmed with data, and we provide that kind of data. Who has possession of the ticket? When did they possess it? In an easily digestible way for our clients. And so I would say, again, this is helping meet an unmet expectations. This is not data rich, information poor. Not only are we providing them data, it's data they really, critically need, but also in a way that's very helpful for them. I mean, if you think about it, right, if I only know 25% of the people coming to my venue, if I'm Boston Symphony, they do 500,000 tickets a year. That means there's 375,000 people I don't know. How do I market to them? How do I create content for them? Right. The first step to solving that problem is just having a way to engage, and that's what our service provides for our clients. Is really reveals who that shadow audience is, and that's someone you can market to. That's someone you can connect to, and that actually helps you create better curated content, better address the experiences that your patrons are looking for.
So let me see if I have this right. Again, if I'm completely wrong, you tell me, because so you say 20 to 40% of people in an audience, the team, the venue, the organization will know, compared to like 90 or 95% for somebody like Disney Plus or Netflix or Apple. I will buy that, but I still kind of I still waffle on whether or not we're like underwhelmed with data, because I also know that, like, from conversations I have, it's not so much that like customer data, it's just useless data. Like, everybody's overwhelmed with useless data. And I guess I'm curious here, because and part of it's like I'm playing a little bit of the dummy, because I know exactly the answer that you're probably going to give me, or I may even know the answer you're going to give me because we've talked about this before, but I'm going to ask you like a moron, so that people can benefit from the like, I don't know what I'm talking about here. And so how do you help guide people with, so when they get this new influx, so like, instead of, let's say they go from 20% to 30%, so, and we use the Boston Symphony and they sell 500,000 tickets, 375,000 of those all of a sudden. So if they take 10% more, that's another 50,000 people, right? How do you help them make sense of this? Because the challenge to me is, you have all this data, but you don't know how to focus. You don't know how to, to use your attention, right? Instead of a laser, it's a shotgun. And, so how do you overcome that? Because that's where I see the overwhelm with data thing. It's like, everybody has access to all this stuff, and it's pointless because they have no funnel, no way of narrowing down their focus to make it useful.
So that leads me to ask you a question. How do you define
Sure.
useful versus useless data?
Well, you have to have questions, right? Just like you had questions for your thing. And I'm sure that at this point, most of the people who are listening to this thing have read the article I wrote about backward market research. It's like, the first thing you need to know to define whether or not data is useful or useless is to understand what question you're going to ask, right? Like, what are you trying to solve for? And then, so you have to start there. And what I find the challenge for most places is that they don't have some kind of a question that guides their research. They don't, like, how they approach data. They're just like, oh, and I'm going to look at the data and I'm going to see what the data tells me. But the data can give you all kinds of mixed signals and like all kinds of false signs if you don't have something that you're really using as a focusing mechanism. Yeah. So like, how do I define it? Is like, well, you got to figure out what the hell you're looking for to start with. Or everything's useless or useful. Either way, it's both sides. Depending on what that. If you don't have that question mapped out, that's my answer.
So to that extent, yeah, I can't speak for our clients when it comes to the questions they want to ask, or why they're asking the questions they're asking. What I am confident in is going from 150,000 to 200,000 potential avenues or people to ask those questions to is powerful and is impactful. And that's a good starting point, right? And that then helps inform maybe what your questions should be. It's those connections, it's those relationships that's the foundation for helping you actually assess how good is your marketing, right? I would say that, if you don't know 75% of the people coming into your venue or your organization, you're incredibly handicapped, even if you're asking the right questions, because there's channels, there's relationships, there's connections you could be making that could, if you're asking the right questions and doing the right things, that could help inform you much, much better. And you might be missing that. And look, models are only as good as the data going into them, right? And if you're missing out on data points just because you're not collecting that information when you have means to do so, you're putting yourself again at a disadvantage. You're not competing. The Boston Symphony is not competing with the Boston Red Sox. They're competing with Netflix.
It's funny that you say such things, because I went through an exercise with an organization where we looked at who their real competition is. And I think that most people, and throughout this, we'll use the Boston Symphony as the example, just because it's the first one that came up. So there's some consistency. If you probably start the thing, and they probably do assume that, like, to an extent, they are competing against the Red Sox, or they are competing against, the Celtics or the Bruins, right? Or I'm forgetting some of the other stuff that would be right there, something going on the Commons or whatever. But actually what you find, like, when you dig in deeply, is that it's doing nothing is your biggest, not going to an event, watching some kind of streaming service, working later or extra. Those were, like, actually, like, when we were looking through, those were the three biggest competitions, was like, doing nothing because everybody's overwhelmed, having to finish up some work, and it's like just eats into their time, or just like zoning out on the couch. Those were like, and I think that, to your point, understanding that actually helps you become a better marketer. It does help you understand, how to reach these people, or what they really are like, because I'm sure that, and you may not have the data for this now, but you probably have an opinion on this. A lot of times, if you don't have this access to all these customers you're talking to, right, you don't know who 80% of your customers are, you often probably can paint a picture that's incorrect, right? Like, you probably assume that people go a lot more than they really do. Like, and I would bet you would find that, like, if you have a season ticket, like if you have a Boston Symphony Orchestra season ticket, and it maybe has 10 performances, and this is Dave and Matt, we go together, we love the symphony, we're going to go. We might actually really only go to like 2 each, and then, like, the other ones we go and we give it out. But people are going, Matt and Dave are like great. They're great because they have a 10 ticket pass, and they go all the time, and that hurts, that harms people. And I think this goes to, like, one of the points that we were talking about earlier, which is, like, one of the challenges adaptation of this technology, or any new technology has with it, is getting people to think differently. So, like, from your point of view, with the technology that True Tickets has, how do you approach thinking differently, approaching these data and this idea differently, because you obviously had to do that for your business, but how do you help your partners see this as well? Because that to me, that when you said that, when we were, like, BSing before, that really struck me, because I was like, that's all I do is try to show people, numbers, facts, figures, to see the world a different way, because it becomes very easy to look at things only the way you've always looked at them.
Well, there's a quote I like to paraphrase from Henry Ford, where it's, if you ask customers what they wanted at the time, they would have said a mechanical horse, right? So to some extent, and that's why I'm excited about what we're rolling out, right? We're really showing people how you can make ticketing a strategic capability for your organization. In the past, again, it was more of a pain point, right? You had the box office controlled ticketing, and it was really a line item expense. And one of the things that we try to talk through with our clients, a lot, prospective clients, when we sit down with them, and say, hey, tell us what the pain points for you are when it comes to ticketing or organization wide. And as they start to describe their pain points in ticketing, ticket delivery, or even from an organizational standpoint, that helps us then understand the areas where we impact their operations, right? We've seen a lot of very interesting things even before we made this announcement. I mean, we've been live with 9 clients, one in 8 in the US and one in London, We've to date delivered 1.7 million tickets and delivered about a million and a quarter. And what we've seen, for example, is a drop in the no-show rate by 2 to 7% with our service relative to other ticket delivery methods, whether it's PDF print at home, hard tickets, pick up and will call. Why is that? Well, look, scalpers, brokers are probably avoiding our tickets, right? So the same people who would eat a ticket, are avoiding and going towards other ticket delivery options. I would say that our ticket, the way our service works is not only is it digital ticketing, but it's also effectively de facto event management, right? There's a story with our client in Orlando. They had their front yard festival and a thunderstorm rolled through at like 7 o'clock, and they had to postpone everything 30 minutes. And we had just implemented with them last year, and everyone was kind of running around the office. Oh my God, we got to do email calls. We got to do radio announcements, all this kind of stuff. And Nick, our client there, says, wait a minute, I just have to update the ticket. And people are going to log on and see it went from 7 to 7:30. And that was it. Right. So and think about people forgetting tickets or tickets going to spam. Right. And you might say, well, a 2 to 7% drop in the no-show rate isn't that important. It is. If you're delivering 100,000 tickets, that's 2,000 to 7,000 more people coming to your venue that wouldn't have come via another method. And what's your per cap? $10, $20, $30? I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars just right there if you're a 100,000 ticket venue, right? The second one we've seen is from an operations standpoint. Our clients have been able to restaff to make for a more optimal client experience. We went to the public theater when we installed with them last year, and the client there, Rich, he was kind enough to give us tickets to a show. We got to see our ticket scanned, and look, ticket scanning isn't super sexy, but when it's the product you've built, it's pretty cool. And I remember asking Rich, I said, okay, what's been the impact of True Tickets? And he goes, look at the will call. And I said, yeah, there's nobody there. And he goes, exactly, there's nobody there. And from an operational standpoint, we've seen people be able to restaff and go from 4 box office will call attendance down to 1 or 2 and restaff and put those in other areas where they're driving more value, right? It's similar to when ATMs came online. People said, oh, bank tellers are going to be out of business. There's going to be no need for bank tellers. Well, it finds out like a bank teller's use of time is much better doing other things than just counting money, right? And then you think about the other thing too is fraud. For a lot of our clients, fraud and malicious secondary market actors are a pain. And we've seen through our service a reduction in greater than 90% in unauthorized secondary market listings and chargebacks and any sort of issues associated with fraud. There's a great story again from Orlando when I went down there. This was the first show we did over 1,000 tickets for. Shocking, right? Now we've delivered 1 million, almost 2 million, and delivered over 1.25 million, which is crazy to me. But I go and I'm watching everything operate. It's going great. I go to my hotel room. I drop off my stuff. I'm coming down the elevator, and 4 guys get in the elevator with paper printouts of our digital tickets, and I know they're not going to work, right? And I'm thinking to myself, don't say anything. But these guys keep talking about the tickets. In fact, one guy goes, I don't know if these tickets look legit. And we get to the lobby, and I turn to him, and I'm actually wearing my True Tickets hat, right? And you can see the logo on the ticket, which I kind of got a kick out of. And I go, just so you know, those tickets aren't going to work. And then, of course, they immediately go to me and they go, well, how do you know they're not going to work? I said, well, I'm the CEO of the company doing the ticket delivery today, and I can tell you this, they're not going to work. And then he goes, I paid $3,500 for these tickets. Mind you, face value of $150 each. He actually pretty much paid as much in fees for a secondary market purchase as he should have paid for those tickets. Now, the great thing is this is a problem we solve for, right? We go back to the issues in ticketing that revolve around trust. It's identity. Who should have this ticket, and accountability? Are the terms and conditions being followed? And so I walked him over and said, you're going to scan the ticket. It's going to scan not authorized, which is a notification to our client that said, hey, at one point this ticket was good, but it's not. Then I'm going to walk you over to Nick. Nick's going to resell you these tickets at face value. The guy's like, I'm going to pay more money. I go, here's how this is going to work out, right? He's going to sell you those tickets at face value, because then you're going to call your credit card company and you're going to go, hey, I bought these tickets. They didn't get me into the show. I want my money back. And the credit card always takes the side of the person, right? Because that's who their customer is. Oh, Mr. Smith, here's your $3,500 back. Sorry about that. We'll take care of it. Then what's going to happen is this broker is going to hop onto their portal and see that $3,500 sale they're super excited about because they only paid $700 for those tickets goes to zero. And, was that tickets on sale site going to eat that cost and still pay that broker? No, they're not. Right. So then that broker in a couple of days is going to call their credit card company and go, somebody stole my credit card number. I don't want these. This was an unauthorized sale. I want my money back. And the credit card company is going to go, oh, yes, sir. Mr. Doe, like, here's your money back. And then they're going to go back to the Dr. Phillips Center, right? And go, hey, Dr. Phillips Center, you have to prove that this was not a fraudulent credit card transaction. And Nick, at this point, up until something like True Tickets, couldn't fight those off. Those were tens of thousands of dollars a year in cost for him. And in this instance, he said, fine, take your money back. I don't care. I made myself whole because I ended up selling the person who went to the show tickets at face value. And by the way, now I know their actual name. I know who they are. I can market to them. Right. So those are examples from an organizational level of how when you invest in a service that makes something strategic like we do for ticketing, how it positively impacts your organization. Right. So I'd say most of the conversation when we're talking to people, it's like, oh, my ticketing department budget for digital tickets is X. Well, look, if you're only concerned about it from a departmental level, then we're not the solution for you. If you're looking to make positive organizational change and positively impact your organization through ticketing, we can do that for you.
So what you try to do is you try to take it to a higher level, right? Which is, that's an old Dave trick. Dave and Coco Chanel have a lot in common because I'm certain you've heard me tell you that like bad marketers make things and good marketers kill stuff, and it's so let me ask you this, because you're trying to take it to a higher level, which it really revolves around the customer, which I think the customer often, even though the customer is the heart of the business, sometimes the customer also takes a back seat in the decision-making process, and in too many places. And that's probably because partly there's silos, which, hamstring anybody. And then there's just like people have been overwhelmed by like so many, cutbacks in staff and everything else. And one of the things you brought up over and over again, because this goes right to the heart of that experience, are the rules on resale, right? Because you said it helps with the no-show rate of 2 to 7%, which you rightly pointed out goes directly to the bottom line, because an empty seat does not buy beer. An empty seat does not buy a T-shirt.
Nope.
An empty seat doesn't buy more tickets.
Nope.
For another show. That's the way I show it. I was like, how much money you're losing just by not driving people into that have already bought your tickets in there. And, for some of the organizations I work with, it's millions of dollars a year, right? Because they're huge. And I was like, all these challenges, you can solve it just by focusing on getting people in the door. But I want to understand a little bit more about the rules on the resale, because, I've dealt with the secondary market for a long time. I don't have I'm probably agnostic about the good or the bad of the secondary market at this point. I go through phases. I'm right now in a completely agnostic, and that's partly because I think that the brokers can provide some value, especially now, as things are recovering. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will do it in the best possible way for everybody involved. They will do it in the best possible way for them. So like, what are these rules on resale and how do they impact your partners and also the end customer? Because I know that's probably one thing that people have a lot of questions about.
So a couple things. In ticketing, I think people conflate who the customer is, right? So there's the consumer of the service, which is the patron or the fan, right, who goes to the venue. The client actually in ticketing, and this is probably a blog post I'll put together here at some point soon, is actually the venue or the organization or the league, right? They're the ones who make the ticketing system purchase. Yeah. When I go to the Red Sox, I have no say over whether or not they continue to use tickets.com. Right. If I go to TD Garden, I have no say over whether the Celtics or the Bruins continue to use Ticketmaster. But we as a patron kind of feel, or a fan feel like, we're the customer. No, we're the consumer. The client's actually the venue, right? And so when we think about the secondary market and that for our clients, up until now, there's just basically been this diametrically opposed option, and it's, do I want control of my ticket or do I want distribution? And I couldn't have both. If I wanted distribution, I just sacrificed control, just had to kind of put up with it. If I wanted control, I lost out on distribution. And what we're exploring now with our clients is how to couple control and distribution with the secondary market, right? If you talk to Gabe at the Roundabout Theater, he's going to tell you, look, there's not a world in which I can compete on your search engine optimization or SEO with a SeatGeek or a Vivid Seats. I'd love to be able to leverage that, right? The Roundabout Theater is never going to be able to compete with that marketing budget. That doesn't mean the Roundabout should have to sacrifice all control of their ticketing and lose out on margin for their best tickets, right? And so it's coupling those things together. And so when we start to kind of think forward or about the future about what rules-based ticket sharing means for rules-based marketplaces, it's actually pretty simple, right? It's what are the channels or distribution channels or partners that clients want to engage in, and where do they want those tickets to be allowed to be transacted? If I'm the Roundabout, do I strike a deal with SeatGeek and they're my only preferred venue or partner that can distribute tickets? The second one would be, what are the pricing rules around that? What can be done, right? Do I allow for above face value? Did someone purchase that? And the second is, what's the revenue model, right? If it goes above face value, do I require, let's say you're Dave, the person selling a Roundabout ticket, and you're selling it above face value, do I make 50% of that markup come back to my organization as a donation? How do I educate you on that? There's so many different things to think about. But again, when you think about the rules, there's actually only a handful of rules you have to kind of enforce and be able to enforce to make this effective. And that's really what we're exploring with our clients. And I think that's where it becomes really interesting. So I would say we don't have it yet. It's one of those things that we're exploring with our clients, and we're progressing down the path of. On the broker angle, look, again, we're actually an agnostic service. We're just an enforcement engine. We're a rules engine.
Don't steal my language, man. Don't steal my language.
But, what it's doing is it's making brokers kind of go back to who they were back in the day, which is people who had to work for their business. They had to develop relationships. They had to add value. Look, there's nothing stopping anyone from going to, let's say, the Segerstrom Center and striking a deal and saying, look, I'm gonna take some of your tickets. I'd like to buy them at this value, which is maybe below face value, and sell them, right? But that's work. If I can contrast that with the Orlando story, that was just ticket flipping. That's someone who's quote unquote a broker, but they're not adding any value. That's just rent seeking behavior. And so from a standpoint of
my language again, man.
I'm sorry, Dave.
That's awesome.
It's too bad. Too bad
Impact.
Too bad we're not. Too bad we don't have like a bingo card or something like that. But it's the truth, right? When you look at it, like what happened in Orlando, there was no value being added there. In fact, that was actually value destruction. In that, what actually happened was the person who went to those seats bought them for face value and went there. But there was all this rigmarole around, I printed off a ticket. I had the heartburn of like, I don't think these are real tickets. Then I scanned the ticket. It didn't get me in. I had to go pay for them again for face value. I had to call my credit card company. That's value destruction. And I would say, again, this boils down to the issues of identity and accountability and ticketing. When you solve for those, you create trust and you create then efficiencies, right? This actually creates efficiencies for the industry. Now, obviously, look, the people who can monetize the opaqueness of the industry, they're going to be disenfranchised and they're going to be negatively impacted. But again, in the Orlando story, I don't feel bad for the secondary market, the broker who was snuffed out, because there was no value added there.
Yeah, what I like here is that, so number one, like the old school ticket brokers, where it was like you had a guy in New York or wherever. Those guys, because that was how my experience with it was. Like, you worked your ass off for your money. You'd make money, but like, you worked really hard for it, and like you had to build these relationships, and you often had a book of business of people who just couldn't be bothered with a 10 a.m. on sale. And that's totally fine. It was good. But what I really like here is that the promise of the secondary market and like these platforms like StubHub or SeatGeek or any of them is that like, oh yeah, you're going to be able to access some of this data and you're going to be able to get some of this customer information back. And most of the time we know that like that doesn't really happen. That's like not really going down. And so by offering these rules up, right, which we've talked about here, it gives people back a little bit of that, right? Because it makes the relationship like a little more balanced. Mm-hmm. Because I'm with you, right? Like some of the stuff that goes on now, it's just speculation, it's just gambling, it's rent-seeking behavior. There is absolutely no value created at all. The only value is that like either you have a bot or you got lucky on an on sale. That is the only value you have, and to me that's, like you said, it's destruction of value.
Mhm.
One point, though, I don't know if you even use this with your partners or not, but the Orlando story is great too, because the thing about it is like those people that you met in the elevator who were questioning the ticket. They were uncertain about what was going on. They'd spent $3,500. Even if the venue had nothing to do with it, it's still a negative impact on their brand as well, because they don't necessarily disconnect the two as being bad. It's just overall a bad experience, and everybody gets knocked down. And like now, they had a great experience because you intervened, but something like this really provides an opportunity to cut out some of those negative situations and those negative occurrences that can impact your organization's brand equity with their end customer that they might not even know are happening. Is that,
No, that's exactly it. One of our clients, are actually our first client, was the Adrian Art is, I shouldn't say past tense, they still are, is the Adrian Art Center in Miami. And it was very insightful for me because they actually brought up the brand impact, right? Dave, you buy a ticket for Hamilton, you go onto Vivid, you pay $500, you go and you're like, oh, I paid $500 for Hamilton. I guess I'm going to have really good seats. And suddenly you're fourth tier, back row at the Art Center, which is really steep up there. And you're saying, and then you don't see the face value, but then you complain to the box office, and they maybe somebody whited out or photoshopped out the face value or something like that, and the box office has nothing to do with that, but the patron automatically assumes like they had something to do with it, right? And again, to your point about rent-seeking behavior, look, it's not the $1,000 orchestra seat that gets thrown up on Vivid. I mean, I guess unless you're Bruce Springsteen and they're selling for 7,000 pop or something like that. But it's typically the $25 ticket, right? That someone's trying to flip for $100 because they think they can make it. And to an extent,
that's the dirty secret too.
You can, and some people would say, hey, there'll be a retort saying, well, you're not pricing your tickets in accordance with the market. Well, what about mission-driven organizations? Think about the Art Center. Their objective is to make the arts available for the greater Miami-Dade community. And if they determine that there's a segment of their population that can only afford a $25 ticket to Hamilton, and their mission is to make Hamilton available for that population, they should be, as the Adrian Art Center, allowed to do that and allowed to enforce that. So the fact that, and this goes back to a ticket not being an asset, a ticket is a revocable license. And so when we think about high level what rules-based ticket sharing means, and you talked about it, right? Like when the venue or the issuer of a ticket can trust their ticketing, that means their patrons can too, right? What does that mean? That means, hey, you're going to get into the event from, if you're a patron, I'm going to get this thing, I'm going to get in, I'm not worried about it, right? Like I'm no longer getting that like panic attack when I hit click and pay for that ticket or access the ticket on my phone. The second is, if you're the venue organizer, you can trust who attended, right? You're now getting that chain of custody, that life cycle of that ticket. You're now seeing who's interacting with your tickets, when they're interacting with your tickets, and when they're coming. And the third is that you can trust your rules being followed. It goes back to the Adrian Art Center issue with Miami, in Miami, and the brand impact. And look, also too, when you're going to a show and you see someone irate at will call, that's a negative experience too. And maybe your ticketing experience was fine. I talked to an NFL team. They let me know they spend on average 30 to 45 minutes, with a CSR with a person who's been impacted by a fraudulent ticket purchase that they can't solve. And for our clients, when you have identity and accountability, those issues are solved in minutes, because the ticket's either attributable to you or was attributed to you, and you no longer are, it's no longer attributed to you, or they can identify who the malicious actor was in the process and then correct it. And so taking something that you couldn't solve, where someone's just upset, kind of like when you're at the Delta gate and that it's that person in line, everyone else has like a 2-second question for the gate agent, but there's a person who's just upset. They just want someone to talk to, and they're there for 30 minutes. You're saying, look, we just got questions. Like, this isn't a therapy session, right? But that, again, that's time, that's efficiency, that's impacting your brand, it's impacting your ability to service your customers. And for our industry, right, it's about delight and excite. And you need to think about that through the entire process. You can't just kind of look at ticketing and go, well, ticketing's a nightmare, but once they get in this door and in their seat, then we're going to blow them away, right? You can't just ignore one aspect of the process. I'm a Naval Academy grad, and they make us learn laws of the sea. And there's one that I always remember, and it's something like this. I'll probably mess it up a little bit, but it's on the strength of one link in the cable dependeth the might of the chain. who knows when thou mayest be tested, so live that thou bearest the strain. Well, if ticketing is your weakest link, that's all you can bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of this, because I've often been telling people, like, look, if you've worked so hard to build a brand, right? And the examples I use, I use the Grateful Dead, and I use Pearl Jam, and these people who have really strict controls on their tickets. If you've done the work to create that brand equity, and you want to sell your tickets all at like $90, right? Like the Pearl Jam tour, knowing that you could probably charge twice that much easily, well within your rights, because you've established that connection with your customers. You want to limit people to be able to do these things. It's cool. Because I know there's tons of people who don't, right? But that's on you. And if you want to change the rules because your brand's not strong enough, then you probably do need help. But if you have that strong brand, like the Arts Center, right, and you only want those things to sell at $25 in the fourth tier, because there's a segment of your market that you'd love to get into the arts, because the arts has a transformational, power. You should be able to do that, because that's you can't get through Miami without seeing that beautiful building. It's a beautiful building, and it's so cool. Yeah. I mean, that's like one of my favorite buildings in Miami. It's just amazing looking.
It's a beautiful building. I am so fortunate. We have an amazing team. We have an amazing company. We have an amazing product, but we also have amazing clients. I used to work as a consultant, right? And I would joke that you kind of get three things in consulting. You get the team you want, you get the location you want, you get the project you want. Nobody in consulting ever gets all three. Maybe you get two of the three. Usually you get one of the three. And I get to wake up every day, work with an amazing team, creating, being a positive agent of change in this industry, and working for clients who, one, are amazing, and two, are just amazing to go see. Right, the Arch Center right on the Biscayne Bay. You go to the Segerstrom Center, and they've got that massive arch and that plaza. The Dr. Phillips Center, that the new Steinmetz Hall in the front, that glass front. I mean, Tanglewood, Boston Symphony. I am going to stop now, and I apologize to any of our clients that I'm leaving out, because I don't mean to offend them, but I don't want to list them all. But I'd like to list them all, but I don't want to get into that advertisement aspect of it. But they're so amazing. I enjoy going to every one of them, because their goal. People are coming there to experience something different, to experience joy, right? And we get to experience that too with them. So that's what's really exciting. That's what I'm incredibly thankful for.
Yeah, and there's time for plugs at the end, Matt. There's time for plugs at the end. But no, it's absolutely true. It is one of the things of working for myself is that I am able to achieve those three things more often than not when because that used to be the case when I worked inside bigger organizations, was like on that a lot I couldn't control. But now one final thing I want to touch on before I let you go today, because I thought it was interesting, and it really mirrors my thought on strategy and the way I talk with people about strategy. And it's also reflective of the big leap of faith that you're taking by, introducing rules-based tickets, and it's the idea that you're testing a hypothesis, and you don't necessarily understand, you don't know if it's going to work or not. And the way I want to ask the question, because I think it's important for people to understand, is you've made strategic choices, right? And are they right or wrong? We don't know yet, right? This is a challenge that everybody's dealing with, right? And all you can really do is make the best choices you have access to, because all the data, right, that we talked about earlier, everything that happened in the past, the future is unknowable right now. You have to take a leap of faith. How have you guided True Tickets to take that leap of faith? Because I think that's important for everybody right now to understand and to think about as we kind of try to recover from, all the impacts of COVID.
First things first, you have to acknowledge that it's there, right? And you have to be okay with it. I think it's accept the angst. And look, it takes a special kind of person to work in a startup. It takes a special kind of person to want to go down this journey and accept that, right? There's a great HBR video. Strategy is not planning, or planning versus strategy, right? Planning is things
Roger
we can
Martin.
Control. Yeah. Planning is things we can control, right? Planning is comfortable. I'm gonna build this factory. I'm gonna hire this many people. I'm gonna make this many widgets. Planning is comfortable because it's known. When you're truly testing a strategic hypothesis, you have inclinations about the outcome, but you can't prove it. You can't guarantee it. In fact, we had our board meeting last week, and obviously everything was, well, what do you think this is going to drive? What do you think your revenue is going to be? What was your client prospect list look like? How many do you think you're going to convert? And honestly, I said, I don't know. And that's just the reality. And I'm very optimistic. I'm very excited because the reception we've had in the last week and a half, 2 weeks that we've rolled this out has been incredible. And I believe that people will see the value in what this can do for them, and they'll be able to connect that to their business. And that's going to be that kind of transformational moment, right? So think about things where there have been massive shifts or people took strategic bets, right? Independent of maybe people's personal feelings about Elon Musk, before the Model S rolled out, people had a vision of what an electric car was, right? It's small, it's not performant, can't do much, can't carry much. Maybe if I only travel down the street, maybe I'll get one, right? Like it's got to be smaller, compact. And then the Model S rolls out and just completely changes how you think about electric cars. Smartphones, right? There was the Palm and the BlackBerry before the iPhone, and people were saying, why do I need this iPhone? Like there's the BlackBerry and there's the Palm. And then because of how the iPhone was designed, it was strategically different. And again, that's why when we started this podcast, I think it's so important to focus on the why about what we do, right? We're not a consultancy. We're not doing statements of work. We're not an app developer who's just saying, all right, well, what do you want in your app? We're focused on solving identity and accountability problems in ticketing. And today that starts with rules-based ticket sharing. Tomorrow that's about marketplace infrastructure. That's the vision. That's the direction. We're a dynamic product. We're not a static product. We're constantly evolving towards that vision. And I think that's why, as the CEO, I think one of the things I'd like to think I do well is acknowledge, right, that there's just some unknowns and we have to be okay with it. But we also know too that those unknowns are going to be revealed to us, and we're going to have a great reveal for us here in the next couple of weeks as we go to the Tessitura Learning and Community Conference, and then we're gonna have more reveals beyond that. And you just have to be open to that, and you have to accept that. And what helps with this company too is that future you're building for, that you're hypothesis testing, is that exciting for people? I think people are willing to take the risk if the future that you're working towards, if you achieve it, if they see it as being worthwhile. And for me at True Tickets, why I've been doing this for 4.5 years now, I can't believe it's been 4.5 years since I left my time in corporate innovation and doing it. That's what keeps me going. Is the vision for me is still very much tangible, still very much achievable, even though it's not certain.
Yeah, no, and thank you for explaining that, because I feel that it's a message that I try to share with people. Like, it's like you have to be comfortable, especially the part about having to be comfortable with the angst. You absolutely must be comfortable with the angst, but that there's nothing guaranteed. But standing still will guarantee that people are going to pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
And and if I can only beat that into people's heads every day, I will, because it's so important. And who knows what's going to happen. I'm excited for you, and I think it's cool technology. Some of the access to the data, even though I was trying to act like I was like a knucklehead and didn't know that, like, what, so I was asking questions in a way that like a third grader might, so that I seemed like I was completely a novice in the thing, are really great. Giving people the ability to control how their tickets are used. It's important because your brand, I think, is going to become more and more important than it was even before. And I think people have under-invested and underappreciated their brands for a long time. And so, all of these things I think are just really, really important for people. And I hope, with the launch of the new rules-based ticketing, and some of the new stuff that's going to be rolled out, I wish you guys the best. And I promised you the opportunity to plug. So plug away, Matt. How can people find you?
Yeah.
Plug.
You can find me on I'm on Twitter at ML Zarracina. on LinkedIn. I think it's M Zarracina. Also on Instagram. I can't remember my Instagram handle. But I guess the remaining clients, because we only have so many, right? I missed the Public in New York. I missed Roundabout in New York. I missed the Straz in Tampa.
You can't forget Gabe, because if I
can't forget Gabe. No. I know.
Emails like, why didn't you mention me?
We've got the Roundhouse in London. We've got the Smith Center in Las Vegas. We talked about Segerstrom. And then I think a new one. We just signed the Kauffman Center in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'll be heading to Kansas City after they launch for a night. Check out how things are working with them. Catch a show. Maybe grab some Oklahoma Joes down there.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you for doing this, man.
Awesome, Dave. Always good to chat.
Let me know what you thought about my conversation with Matt by sending me an email. It is my name, dave@davewakeman.com. Make sure you get the Talking Tickets newsletter by signing up at talkingtickets.substack.com. And you can also find out what's going on with me, find out all kinds of crazy stuff by visiting my website. It's davewakeman.com. As always, I want to thank you so much for being here and listening. Any guests, any ideas, any feedback on the podcast, just drop me a note. Let me know. I'm always looking to make this thing more valuable and more useful to people. So send me an email, dave@davewakeman.com. And as I have said since the pandemic started, if you need somebody to chat to, I'm happy to be an ear to bend. I'm happy to be there to crack some really terrible dad jokes, or just to be somebody to lend an ear. Send me an email. It's dave@davewakeman.com. And as always, if you like the podcast, share it. Rate it, review it, and subscribe. It means the world to me. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.